blood flow on both sides to the brain, and that results in unconsciousness. Upon unconsciousness, then there may be a variable period of time of application, but effectively after about a minute and a half to 2 minutes, without any resuscitation, without any attempt to revive, the process is over and the person will be dead.
So it would take at a minimum 1.5 to 2 minutes of constant pressure before the person would expire as a result of strangulation.
That's correct. There may be some individual variability, but we have to take that into consideration. And no one has done particular experiments by comparing certain number of people being strangled at the same time and how fast each and every victim succumbs to that type of malicious intervention, if you want. So this is all basically the result of cumulative experience over cases and time.
Sir, when you complete an autopsy, do you prepare a report?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach your clerk? Sir. Your Honor, for the record, I've pre-marked the autopsy protocol prepared by Dr. Drest as plaintiff's exhibit number 1. I've previously shown it to the defense counsel. I believe we have a stipulation regarding consent.
That's correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Sir, I'm showing you what's been admitted as Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is the photostatic copy of the complete autopsy protocol that was issued by me that I have here in my file.
And you prepared this report, correct?
I prepared the general protocol. The toxicological analysis are done through the toxicology laboratory, but it is integral part of the report, and I completed it myself.
Just want to make sure I understand. That's the autopsy protocol you're indicating for your exam of Jessica White.
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct.
Your Honor, it's been admitted. May I approach and publish the report?
You may.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Ross.
Good morning, Dr. Gravik.
Morning, sir.
Dr. Gravik, you indicated in your report and going to the conclusion that it was a ligature that was...
Ligature.
Ligature. And when you say ligature, does that refer to the application of force by hands or by a device?
It would be the device. Had it been application of hands, it would have been referred to as manual strangulation, as we know it, by someone applying the hand or the hands around the neck and squeezing the neck.
And if you saw the signs of manual strangulation, you'd also have bruising, not fingerprints, but finger-sized bruises. Would that be consistent with a manual strangulation?
Generally, there will be likely some signs of violence on the outside, on the skin of the neck, in those areas where pressure would have been applied, and there would have been some evidence of bruising inside in the internal structures of the neck, because that type of pressure creates broken blood vessels within the tissues that present to us as bruise or bruises.
And you didn't see anything like that in this case?
That is correct.
Describe what the injury, the ligature injury that you did find. How did that appear, and did it go all the way? How did it appear first, and did it go all the way around the neck?
This was a horizontal pattern of a ligature mark that is, as I indicated, partly obscured in some areas by the fact that there was sloughing of the skin because of decomposition. But that pattern of a ligature mark that was half an inch wide, or approximately half an inch wide there, was a horizontal pattern. It was not slanted upward in the back or in the front or to the side. It was kind of horizontal.
So was it all the way around the neck?
Yes, but as I indicated, it is obscured by some way, so you could not trace it completely, but there was that pattern, circumferential pattern around the whole neck.
And you indicated that, and so unlike a manual strangulation, what other injuries were found to the neck in that area?
No other injuries.
Okay, no other bruising or...
That's correct.
Or anything like that?
That's correct.
Indicative of manual strangulation. Now, you also indicated on direct that there was no evidence of suspension, and I presume that means hanging, correct?
That's correct, and one would have to consider that as a component if that type of pattern would have been found. And this is what I'm talking about, the slanted orientation of the ligature mark, either into the back, into the hairline, or to the side of the neck, right side or left side of the neck, or even in the front.
So, and you didn't see any injuries consistent with that, so you ruled out suspension as correct?
Yeah, there was no evidence to suggest suspension.
Based upon your analysis and evaluation of the body, could you indicate whether the person was in a prone position when the application of the ligature was given?
I cannot infer that from what I have available.
But you can say that it wasn't suspension, but you can't say whether the victim would have been in a prone position, lying down, or standing up?
Or standing up, or squatting, or kneeling, or sitting, or, I mean, there are so many variables there that I cannot make that distinction on the basis of the available information.
One of the other things that you do in an autopsy protocol or an autopsy evaluation is look for what you call defensive injuries or defensive wounds on a victim. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In this case, you didn't see anything that would indicate that. Is that fair?
That is fair. There was no evidence of such many injuries along the lines of suggestion of some violent encounter that the victim would have initiated an attempt to fend off or something.
And there was nothing consistent with that in your findings in this case, correct?
Yeah. That's correct. The only bruising that was relatively fresh was found in the mid-thigh area, in the front aspect of the mid-thigh area.
And you noted that, but there's no other significance to that, is that correct?
That's correct. That was just there. So.
With respect to the time frame, narrowing that down, based upon your training and experience as an expert in this field, I know this was asked to you on direct, but I'm going to ask it as well. How long does it take for asphyxiation to occur? In other words, for somebody to die from application of a ligature?
Well, we are talking the cumulative time, a minimum of about a minute and a half of continued pressure that would not allow for the recovery of a person. Minimum, we're talking about the minimum. That might have been 2, 3, 4 minutes, depending on various physical circumstances that can be individual to the person or individual to the overall set of circumstances and the assailant as well.
Putting into that factor, getting into that factor, if there is no removal of the application of force, continued consistent application of force, and would you say that the time would be shorter if there is no removal of that force? In other words, if there is continued application of the ligature?
We talked earlier, just to clarify that, the amount of time needed to render the victim unconscious under those circumstances is fairly short if someone is knowledgeable how to apply and how strongly and tightly one applies the ligature. And that can go from about 7 to 10 seconds or even a little bit longer, if the
I'm
person...
sorry, to the point of unconsciousness.
To the point of unconsciousness, not to the point of death. Now, at that point, if the pressure is released, the person can spontaneously regain consciousness because the circulation is allowed, the heart has not stopped yet.
But you can't tell from reviewing the evidence that you have here whether or not there was a release of the application of force or not, or just a consistent application, is that correct?
I cannot. I can only tell what's on the body and what's in the body at the time I examine the body, given the effect of alteration due to decomposition and everything else.
And would a person succumb to unconsciousness quicker with a ligature or a rope device or would it, would a person succumb to unconsciousness quicker with the application of ligature injuries or with just manual strangulation with their hands?
Well, that really depends on the skill of the assailant applying the force. Some people are very skilled in applying the force with their hands, and that's the carotid sleeper of the martial arts technique that can render a person quickly unconscious. But if they continue maintaining that type of pressure on the carotid, the outcome is the same. So,
but generally, would you think that the application of a ligature would cause unconsciousness quicker than manual strangulation?
it's really comparing mangoes and papayas with pomegranates and figs. All of the above are possible, meaning that ligature may be in a case faster, manual strangulation may be shorter, well, maybe longer, or vice versa. I mean, there is no way to infer anything from the available information.
Without giving more information.
Or without videotaping the whole procedure.
But 7 to 10 seconds for unconsciousness to occur by a ligature would not be unusual.
That would be the general estimation, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, people have no further questions.
All right. This may be, Lisa.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Doctor. You're all set.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You leave. Okay, Get you ready to call the next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, if you call Officer Westenberg, he's being brought in now.
Officer, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to work from the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You have a seat in that chair. You will call the acoustics here are terrible. Sir, conditioning unit is very loud. I need to hear your testimony. The microphone on your other side needs to pick up your testimony as well for the transcript. So please speak loudly.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You're with us.
Thank you. Sir, could you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Officer Mark Westenberg, last name Westenberg.
And are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
Who are you employed by?
Hazel Park Police Department.
How long have you been with the Hazel Park Police Department?
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years?
Yep.
Employed anywhere before that?
No, sir.
And what are your duties with the Hazel Park Police Department?
Patrol the city, answer dispatch calls, make sure everything's running smoothly in the city.
And you're a patrol officer with Hazel Park,
Yes,
is
sir.
that correct?
Yep.
Right. I want to direct you to May 3rd, 2016, at approximately 9 p.m. or 9:15 p.m. Do you remember that date and time?
Yes, I do.
Were you working on that date and time?
Yes, I was.
Were you working with somebody else or by yourself?
I was in the vehicle by myself.
Okay. And were you dispatched to go somewhere at that point?
Yes, I was.
Where were you dispatched to go?
I was dispatched to go to a house on a welfare check.
A house on a welfare check?
Yes.
Do you remember the address of that house?
Not at this moment, I don't know.
That house was in Hazel Park, correct?
Yes, it was. It was a Woodward Heights address.
Woodward Heights, is that a street in Hazel Park?
Yes, it is.
We're looking at your report, refresh your recollection as to the address, officer.
Yes, it would.
This is something that at some time you did know that you had written down, and that on review of that writing would refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Burrell, any objection?
No, Judge.
May approach the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, I'm showing you the cover sheet to the report. Does this refresh your recollection as to where you went?
Yes, it does.
Could you tell the court where you went that day?
The address was 640 East Woodward Heights in Hazel Park.
Can you tell the court what is at 640 Woodward Heights in Hazel Park?
A residence,
Can you describe that house to the court?
two-story, grayish blue house with red trim, red front door, attached garage on the south end with a sunroom connecting the main portion of the home to the garage.
All right, you said you were dispatched there on a welfare check.
Correct.
And you remember who that welfare check was regarding?
Jessica White.
And when you got to that location, did you go there by yourself or did you go there with other people?
I was there with another officer, Officer Scott Silver.
Is he with Hazel Park as well?
Yes, he is.
What did you and Officer Silver do once you got there?
We were advised to, if we could make entry into the home without forcing entry. So when we got to the house, we saw an open window and waited for our Lieutenant Buchholz, Brian Buchholz to show up, and that's when we made entry into the house.
Where did you see this open window at?
It was the south end of the home, the second story bedroom was the southeast window in the home.
And was there something aiding you in getting into the window?
No, there was not.
Okay. How did you get into the window?
We walked into the backyard, and there had already been an extension ladder leaning on the garage. We climbed up onto the roof, and like I said earlier, the sunroom connecting the home and the garage had a roof as well, so we were able to walk right across and go into the bedroom.
So you went into the bedroom through the open window?
Correct.
And what did you see when you got into the bedroom itself?
A mattress and a box spring sitting on the floor, couch, coffee table, a dresser, which had been pulled away from the wall.
Tell the court about how the dresser was oriented within the room.
The dresser was pulled away on a 45-degree angle, not typically flush against the wall like it should have been.
So it was just standing in the middle of the room then?
One of the corners was still against the wall, but the other side of the dresser had been pulled out, as if to pull it away from the wall.
And was there anything on the wall where you believe the dresser had originally stood?
There was a half door which led into the attic crawl space.
What was that half door made of?
It was just a piece of plywood, made it look like it was part of the wall. There was a little bit of trim around it, but it was just a attic entry door.
What did you do at that point?
At that point, after all three officers were in the bedroom, Lieutenant Buchholz, opened the door to the attic crawl space, looked in. Once he did, Officer Silver and myself did as well, and that's when we located the victim.
Tell the court what you saw when you looked in the attic of the crawl space.
A lot of insulation, some pieces of wood, just miscellaneous items, and the south end of the crawl space was the blue tarp where the victim was at, pinched to where the floor and the roof connected. She was pushed all the way into the corner on the south end.
Could you see the actual body?
No, just
What did you see?
the tarp, the blue tarp wrapped with duct tape and cable wire.
All right, did you address the blue tarp at that time?
Not at that moment, no.
What did you do at that point?
At that point, the Officer Silver, Lieutenant Buchholz, and I cleared the rest of the house for safety precautions to make sure no one else was in the home. And after that, we exited the home and waited for Hazel Park Fire to show up.
What was the purpose of Hazel Park Fire Department showing up?
The purpose for them to show up was to confirm that there was deceased individual up in that blue tarp. And at that point, Officer Silver, myself, and 2 firefighters went back up into the bedroom, into the crawl space, to confirm the deceased.
And what happened when you went back into the crawl space?
Officer Silver and myself went into the crawl space. I was behind Officer Silver. He made a approximately 8-inch incision in the tarp, exposing the victim's face.
Could you tell if at that point, could you tell if the person inside the tarp was dead or alive?
At that point, you could tell that she was deceased.
She was deceased.
Correct.
Did you leave the residence at that point?
After that happened, fire confirmed that it was a deceased individual. We then exited the house and secured the scene and waited for Michigan State Police.
The tarp that you observed, you indicated that it was blue in color, correct?
Correct.
Was there anything on the outside of the tarp?
Just the duct tape holding it together and the cable wire.
Can you try to describe that to the court, please?
It was wrapped kind of on as if you were wrapping something up, rolling it up like a piece of paper and then taping around it. The duct tape was what was holding the majority of it together. The cable wire didn't seem like it was the main reason for it being held together. It was more of the tape.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Ross?
Sir, what time of day was it that you went to the area on the East River Heights?
What time of day you said?
Yeah, what time was it?
It was, I don't remember the exact time. It was towards the start of my shift. I would say probably 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening.
And that was based on a welfare check?
Correct. We had received information from Troy PD that Jessica was in the home. And our sergeant on the desk told Officer Silver and myself to go to the home. If you can make entry without forcing your way in, try locate her.
Okay, and then, at what time did you receive that dispatch, that information from Troy that Jessica may be in that home?
I would assume moments before my desk sergeant dispatched me to the house.
Okay, and you went there with, who else did you go there with?
Officer Silver and myself originally made it to the home. When we got to the home and saw the open window, we stood by and waited for Lieutenant Brian Buchholz to show up, and that's when the 3 of us made entry.
And why did you wait for the lieutenant to show up?
To have a lieutenant command staff on scene.
How much time did it last from the time that you got the dispatch at this point?
I would probably say from the time we got the dispatch to the time we got into the house was probably 10 minutes at the max.
And how did you gain access into the home?
Through the open bedroom window.
Did anybody give you consent or authorization to go into their room?
Not at that moment, no.
Did you have a search warrant at that time?
Not at that moment, I did not.
And who else went into the room with you?
In the room was myself, Officer Silver, and Lieutenant Buchholz.
And when you went into, were you able to determine whose room it was?
From what I assumed, it was Jordan's, but I didn't make that assumption at that point.
Was he or anybody else in the home at that time?
No one was in the home when we were in the home.
I have nothing further.
Need to redirect?
No, Your Honor.
This witness may be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, officer. You're all set.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, if you call Detective Schuler, and she'll be brought in shortly.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may have a seat in that chair. The acoustics here are terrible. This air conditioning unit is louder than your normal voice. The microphone on the other side of me has to pick up your voice for a transcript, and I need to hear your voice for the testimony. So please speak loud. I will not tell you to bring it down, only up, okay?
Okay, Your Honor.
Louder.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, like that. Your witness.
Thank you. Ma'am, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Sure. Christine Schuler, S-H-U-L-E-R.
And are you currently employed?
I am.
Who are you employed by?
The City of Troy Police Department.
What do you do for Troy Police Department?
I'm a police officer currently assigned to the Investigations Division.
And can you tell the judge what your duties are with that assignment?
Yes, I get assigned as an officer in charge of cases that our supervisors assign for further investigation, do interviews, follow up, and then if something criminal has occurred, present the case to the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office for a warrant request.
Were you involved in the investigation of what had happened to a missing person by the name of Jessica White?
Yes, I was.
What was your involvement with that?
I was assigned as the officer in charge of the missing persons report that her mother had filed with the Troy Police Department with her being a resident of Troy.
Ms. White was a resident of Troy?
Correct.
Okay, and you were assigned as the officer in charge? Correct?
Yes.
Do you remember when you were assigned or when the missing persons report was filed?
No, the report was made on April 24th of 2016, and I was probably assigned it the next day.
Okay, what did you do after you got that assignment?
I made contact with Jessica White's mother, obtained some information, did some follow-up in the case, such as things with cell phones and cell phone pings, cell phone records. Then I also scheduled an interview with Jordan McClanahan.
And did you interview Jordan McClanahan?
I did.
Do you remember when you interviewed Jordan McClanahan?
The first interview was on April 28th of 2016.
And where did that interview take place at?
I'm sorry, you said April 28th?
Correct.
Thank you.
Where did that interview take place at?
The Troy Police Department.
And did you sit face-to-face with Mr. McClanahan at that point in time?
I did.
Did you get a good look at him?
I did.
Would you recognize him if you saw him again?
Yes.
Do you see him anywhere in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you tell the judge where Jordan McClanahan is sitting and what he's wearing today?
Yes, he's to my left in front of me wearing the orange jumpsuit.
Your Honor, could the record reflect the identification of the defendant?
No objection?
No objection.
So identified.
Thank you. What was the purpose of interviewing the defendant on the 28th?
On the 28th, it was to get some more information, find out Jessica's last whereabouts. He was supposed to be the person that last had contact with her, so just to pin down some information from him about where her possible whereabouts were and his contact with her before she went missing.
Generally, what information did he provide you in that interview?
He had indicated that he had dropped her off the morning of April 23rd, 2016, somewhere in the area of Golden Gate in Detroit per her request.
Okay. And was there anything else significant about that interview?
Yes, I had some phone information that I had obtained from Jessica White's cell phone records that was conflicting what he was telling me.
Okay, and did you confront him with that?
I did.
What was his response?
He denied sending the message in question from Jessica White's phone.
Can you detail that message for us?
Yes. I got Jessica White's phone records for the last couple days, including text messages, and the last outgoing message was to a person that I determined to be Kim Morelli. And the text came from Jessica's phone to Kim Morelli's phone, indicating that, hey, it's Jordan, I have my brother's phone, and it was approximately 3:15 in the morning on the 23rd of April, which would have been the last message going from that phone, and he indicated he didn't remember sending it. He also indicated that...
Sorry, I want to make sure I understand. You're saying that the last text message sent from a cell phone that was identified to you as Jessica White's cell phone is a text message to a Kim Morelli purporting to be from Jordan McClanahan.
Correct. The context of the text indicated that it was Jordan.
All right. Sorry, proceed.
And then, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Jordan indicated that he didn't recall sending that message. He further indicated that Jessica did not know Kim and wouldn't have had Kim's number in her phone.
Was the defendant placed under arrest on April 28th?
No, he wasn't.
Okay. Was he free to leave the station at that point?
Yes.
And did he leave by his own free will that day?
He did.
Okay. Did there come another time that you became in contact with the defendant?
I did.
When was that?
That was on May 3rd of 2016 at approximately 8 in the evening.
At approximately 8 in the evening?
Correct.
How did that contact occur?
The front desk officer at the Troy Police Department contacted me at home and indicated that Jordan had arrived at the police station with his family and that he wanted to speak with me.
Did you speak to Jordan over the phone?
I did.
Did you remember Jordan's voice, the defendant's voice from the last time you spoke with him?
I did.
All right, and that was the same person that you had interviewed on April 28th, correct?
Correct.
The person you talked to on the phone, based on voice recognition, was the same person you previously had identified in court, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell the court about that phone call that you had on May 3rd?
Yes. Jordan had indicated that he came in to speak with me. He wanted to speak with only me, and that he had some more things to tell me, that he wasn't completely honest with me during the initial interview on the 28th, that some of his memories started to come back to him regarding the night Jessica went missing, and that he started to get some really bad feelings and thought that something bad happened, and that he looked in an attic that's up in his room. He either described it as an attic or a closet and indicated that Jessica was in there wrapped in a tarp.
What did you do upon receiving that information?
I advised him that I would come in from home and speak with him at the Troy Police Department.
And did you do that?
I did.
Do you remember about what time you would have arrived at the Troy Police Department?
Approximately 9 o'clock, and I also had contacted Hazel Park Police Department to advise them of the new information.
Did anybody from Hazel Park meet you at the Troy Police Department?
Yes.
Who met you there?
Detective Lowry.
What did you do when you got to the Troy Police Department?
I obtained a written statement that Jordan had filled out while he was waiting with our front desk officer, reviewed that. It was a short statement, and then...
Let me stop right there, Detective. You said you reviewed a statement that this defendant wrote out?
I did.
Was there anything significant in there that wasn't in the phone call that was to you?
Yes, in the written statement, he indicated I did something bad to her.
Okay. What did you do after you reviewed that written statement?
Then we proceeded to interview Jordan at the Troy Police Department, myself and Detective Lowry.
Where did you interview the defendant at?
In the investigations division, we have several interview rooms. I used one of those interview rooms.
Before you interviewed the defendant, did you advise him of anything?
Yes,
What did you advise him?
his Miranda rights.
And did you use a form to help accomplish that?
Yes.
Okay, did you or Detective Lowry read the rights off of the form?
Yes, Detective Lowry did.
Okay. Did the defendant agree to speak with you after he had been read his rights?
Yes.
Before and during the course of the interview, did the defendant wish to indicate to you that he needed anything?
Yes, I mean, he was offered food and beverage. He also requested a cigarette, which I said I would try to get. No one had any. But whenever he needed something to drink or eat, he was provided that.
Was the defendant allowed to use the restroom during the course of the interview?
Yes, he was.
What was the purpose in interviewing the defendant on May 3rd in the evening hours?
Well, he had indicated over the phone that, Jessica was in his home, further indicated in the statement that something bad happened to her, so it was to determine what happened to her and what we were dealing with.
Can you tell the court about the conversation the interview that you had with the defendant?
Yes. Initially, he had indicated that she is in a blue tarp in this either attic crawl space that's in his room, that she's wrapped up there. He indicated that he had consumed several different types of narcotics that night and alcohol, and that his memory was somewhat fuzzy, but it had been coming back to him over the last several days. Initially, he said he had picked her up from her house in Troy on the 22nd of April, that they went and got something to drink, they had some alcohol at his house. Initially, the first story was that they had sexual intercourse and that she kind of went to lay down, half semi-intoxicated. And then he indicated that after that he indicated that he had strangled her after they had sex.
Did he actually use the word strangle?
He did.
Okay. Now, you said that was the first story that he told you?
Correct.
What was, assuming there was another story?
Yes. Eventually, he indicated that he was laying on his love seat, that he let Jessica sleep on the bed. He said that he described it as like half sleeping, half not, under the influence. She was laying on his bed while he was in a different area of the room on the love seat. He indicated that he went to retrieve a white belt of his, and that he went over, and then he described how she's laying on the bed. He went over and took the belt, kind of put it in, I guess I'll describe it as a loop, and then pulled it tight in the front of the neck area, for approximately 2 to 3 minutes until she was deceased, and then indicated that he had sexual intercourse with her after that, and then that he went to the garage, retrieved a blue tarp, put her on the blue tarp. At some point, he indicated that he cut her fingertips off, all 10 of them, at the first knuckle.
Let me stop right there. He talked about cutting her fingertips off?
He did.
Can you tell the court what he said about cutting the fingertips off?
He indicated that he went and retrieved bolt cutters from the garage, and that he used those to cut all 10 of her fingertips off at the knuckle.
Did he indicate how he disposed of the fingertips that he cut off?
Yes, he indicated that he placed them in foil and then threw them away in his garbage along with some of her other personal items.
What else did he indicate that he threw away of hers?
He believed her phone and her clothing and her boots.
Did he demonstrate to you the strangulation?
He did.
Can you try to describe to the court how that looked?
Yeah, the best way I can describe it is he indicated that he put the belt, well, he describes that she's laying on her back on the bed, that he put the belt under her neck and then pulled it tight in the front of her neck for approximately 2 to 3 minutes.
Did he say where he got the belt from?
He indicated that it was in his room and he had to get off the love seat and retrieve it.
Because he was on the left seat and she was on the bed, correct? And the belt was somewhere else in that same room?
Correct.
With regards to, in the course of the interview, did you at all discuss why the fingertips were cut off?
Yes, initially he said he didn't know and then eventually agreed that for identification purposes, as fingerprints, could lead to an identification, and indicated that's why he cut those off.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Ross?
Detective, what led you to contact the defendant for the April 28th interview?
Because he was reportedly last with the victim, and his story was kind of inconsistent to what he was telling her parents.
Where did you get that? Did you get that information from a Hazel Park detective or from anybody else?
No, that was actually in our initial missing persons report that Jessica's mother reported at the front desk.
So based on the complainant's mother's report, that's why you went to contact the defendant, correct?
Correct.
And then he came in for an interview, and how long did that, and he voluntarily turned, I don't want to say turn himself, and he agreed to meet with you at the Detroit Police Department, correct?
Correct.
How long did that interview take place for?
The first interview approximately an hour and a half.
And during that time frame, did you ask the defendant about any mental health history, anything of that nature?
We talked a little bit about that. I think he had told me that his mother had passed away and that he was suffering some depression and that he took some medications.
Do you recall what medications he indicated that he had took you on that April 28th interview?
I don't.
And he had agreed to meet with you at a later point also on that day for another interview, is that fair?
On the same date?
Yeah, wasn't there another time that was scheduled for an additional interview that was going to occur?
A different day, yes. Yes.
And after the 28th, you had no further contact until May 3rd with the defendant, is that right?
Correct. I tried calling him several times. He wouldn't return my calls, and I also made contact with his father.
And did his father indicate his whereabouts?
Yes, he did.
And so the next time you actually communicated with the defendant was on May 3rd when he had gone to the front desk of the Detroit Police Department, correct?
Correct.
What time was that, if you remember?
Approximately 8 in the evening.
And did you speak, and you probably brought this out on direct, did you speak with the defendant by phone that time as you were coming in?
Yes.
How long did that conversation take place for?
Approximately a minute.
Was there anything out of did he sound the same to you when you spoke to him then as the first time you interviewed him on the 28th?
I would say he sounded a little more sad, upset on the phone.
Was his demeanor, was his voice somewhat more withdrawn?
A little, yes.
Monotone, perhaps?
Yes,
After that interview that you had, after that phone conversation, you were sure the defendants were on their way in from home, correct?
correct.
And you advised him to wait at the Detroit police station?
Yes.
Were you, and that was for the purpose of doing the interview, did anybody speak to the defendant or Mirandize him prior to your arrival?
No, no one was speaking with him at that time. He was waiting in the lobby for me.
And as soon as you saw him in the lobby, that's when you directed him to walk with, he indicated he wanted to talk to you?
Yes,
And then after that conversation occurred, you went with him with another detective to an interview room, correct?
there wasn't any conversation in between. We just escorted him up to the prior room where we were.
Okay, and then was it the same room?
Yes,
And then that room, those interview rooms have a recording system, correct?
yes,
And that interview, both interviews with the defendant were recorded, correct?
they were.
And to be fair, the defendant, they're not advised they're being recorded, but they are.
Correct.
And when you spoke with the defendant, you Mirandized him at this point, is that right?
Yes,
Did you read him the Miranda rights prior to beginning any questioning of the defendant?
I mean, we had some basic conversation right before, but not questions related to this.
And before you asked anything about Jessica or the homicide, you did read all the Miranda rights to him, is that correct?
Correct.
And the difference this time was that he was not free to leave,
Correct, based on what he had in the written statement when I arrived at the station, that kind of changed things. It indicated that he had done something bad to her.
as well as the phone conversation.
Right, well, the phone conversation, I mean, I guess technically that still could have been an accident or something, but once I arrived at the station, he had indicated, I read the statement, which indicated he did something bad, which kind of changed things.
And that interview, that was on May 3rd, correct?
Correct.
And how long did that interview take place for?
Approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes.
And during that time frame, again, did you ask the defendant about any mental health history? Go into any more detail about that?
Yeah, we talked about, again, that he had been suffering from depression, that he had had some substance abuse issues with medication, that he would start taking his meds and then, go off them once he was feeling better.
And did he indicate anything to you about seeing a psychiatrist or any commitment issues?
I don't recall any commitment issues. I believe he said that he did see a psychiatrist at one point.
And he also indicated to you that he was beginning to remember what had occurred that night with Jessica, correct?
Correct.
And he also indicated to you that he had been consuming alcohol that evening?
Alcohol and a number of pills.
And do you recall what the pills were?
I know that there was a mix of Xanax, Effexor, and Vicodin, I believe.
And do you recall how many of those he told you that he had?
No, I don't believe he ever gave me an amount.
And did he tell you how much he had been drinking that evening?
He indicated that he had 2 drinks of vodka.
And did he indicate to you whether or not Jessica had been also taking the narcotics and the alcohol with him that evening?
He indicated that she drank alcohol.
But not alcohol. But what about marijuana use?
I don't recall.
After that interview with the defendant concluded, he was taken into custody at that point, correct?
Correct.
You contacted Hazel Park then?
Hazel Park was already contacted. I contacted them on my way to the station, and Detective Lowry arrived and sat in the interview with me.
When was Hazel Park contacted about doing a welfare check at the defendant's residence?
I contacted them when I was on the way in from home to the Troy Police Department, indicating what Jordan had told me over the phone.
And that's when they went and, your understanding of the case at that point, that's when Hazel Park went and did the welfare check and found the body of Jessica?
Correct, that's my understanding.
So did they communicate with you that they had found her body while you're interviewing the defendant?
Not to me, no.
But did you know that had occurred while you were interviewing? Did they take a break or contact you during it when you found Jessica's body, anything of that nature?
Yeah, at some point, Detective Lowry, and then when we took a break, he told me that they had told him. His department advised him.
All right, and so some of the details at that point that the defendant was giving you during the interview were contemporaneously being corroborated by the welfare check.
Correct.
Hazel Park did not have a search warrant yet in the house at that point, is that right?
I don't know.
Do you know ultimately if they did, obtain a search warrant?
I know ultimately a search warrant was obtained,
Do you
yes.
know when that was?
Sometime that evening after our interview,
And that was after the interview?
yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Read the rest.
Thank you, Your Honor, no further questions.
All right, this also made the excuse then.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, you're all set on this.
At this point, people have no further witnesses, and we rest.
Defense has no witnesses, for example.
Your Honor, this time the people who moved to bind the defendant over on both charges, first-degree premeditated murder, as well as mutilation of a body. As to count two, I'll start with that one first. The court heard the testimony first of Dr. Drager indicated that the external examination of the body of Jessica White revealed the decapitation of the fingers, all 10 of them, approximately at the first knuckle. We also heard in the interview that the defendant admitted to doing that and using a bolt cutter to perform that action. Secondly, with regards to first-degree premeditated murder, we do have a murder here. We have an admitted murder. Through Dr. Dragovic, we've learned that the cause of death was strangulation, and the defendant corroborated that during the course of his interview. He indicated he strangled her, and he indicated he strangled her for 2 to 3 minutes. Dr. Dragovic educated us and stated that the initial phase of strangulation with the ligature is approximately 7 to 10 seconds as an estimate, and that's what it takes for a loss of consciousness. However, you're looking at approximately a minute and a half or so before death would come upon a person as a result of the strangulation. This is certainly enough time for the defendant to look at this and to have a second look. On top of that, we heard in the course of the interview that the defendant was in a different area of the room, that the defendant got off of the love seat, that the defendant went and retrieved a belt, that the defendant went over to where the victim was at, laying on the bed, that the defendant took the belt, he looped it around the back of her neck, and then pulled it tight around her neck, and then, as I already stated, he kept it there for 2 to 3 minutes. The people feel we have met our burden of probable cause, and we've asked the court to bind the defendant over as charged.
Yeah, the defense would place a general objection to the bind over on first-degree murder. Twofold, that I would ask the court, there certainly was a conflict. I understand the case law is on strangulation. I would ask that, to the defense benefit, make the best case scenario. Dr. Dragovic indicated that it would take at least 7 seconds. The defense would make an argument that that's not sufficient to establish premeditation. I am aware of the case that's been provided. Secondly, Your Honor, I would ask the court to I would place an objection to bind over on the record that when the police did do the welfare check, it was clear that they were looking for a homicide scene at that point. I would, based on the information that they had, they could have secured the premises and obtained a search warrant. Based upon that, I would ask the court to not bind that over.
Defendant Jordan McClanahan is charged with on or about April 24, 2016 in the city of Hazel Park and deliberately attempt to kill, premeditation, kill and murder Jessica Ray White, and did mutilate the face and carry away a portion of the dead body of Jessica Ray White. The law applicable is well known. In order to establish a crime has been committed, the prosecutor need not prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt at a preliminary examination, but must present some evidence of each element. And if the evidence conflicts or raises a reasonable doubt concerning the defendant's guilt, the defendant should nevertheless be found over for trial with the trier of fact and resolve the questions. People versus Yost, Forsyth State Commission, 122-2003, opinion of the Michigan Supreme Court. In fact, the district court cannot discharge a defendant if the evidence conflicts or raises a reasonable doubt concerning a defendant's guilt because it presents an issue for the trier of fact. If there are culpable issues for the trier of fact, the defendant must be bound over. People versus King, 412, Mich. 145, 1981, opinion of the Michigan Supreme Court. That evidence can include circumstantial evidence and reasonable inferences arising from the evidence, which are alone sufficient to support a defendant's bind over if evidence establishes probable cause. People versus Green, 255, Mich. 426, 2003, opinion of the Michigan Court of Appeals. We have here 2 counts that I've just read off. that the people have presented evidence toward today. That evidence being the testimony of three witnesses, Dr. Dragovic, Officer Westenberg, and Officer Schuler, as well as plaintiff's exhibit number 1, the autopsy protocol of Dr. Dragovic relative to the autopsy of Jessica Leigh White. The issues, I believe the testimony and evidence does establish more than sufficient probable cause to bind the defendant over on both counts. The issues argued by the defense. First of all, the testimony from Dr. Dragovic was 7 to 10 seconds for unconsciousness, but not for death. For death, 1.5 minutes or more to establish death. Testimony in no way then does not support sufficient time frame for a defendant to reconsider his actions. Direct attention to the case of People versus Gonzalez, 468-636, 2003 opinion of the Michigan Supreme Court, indicating that to show first-degree premeditated murder, some time span between the initial homicidal intent and the ultimate action is necessary to establish premeditation and deliberation. And in fact, evidence of strangulation may be long enough to afford a reasonable person time to take a second look. The testimony established here, both from Dr. Dragovic as well as from Detective Schuler, is we're talking a minimum of 1.5 minutes, and in this case, defendant's admission to Detective Schuler of 2 to 3 minutes of a strangulation effort with a white belt, consistent with Dr. Dragovic's testimony as to the ligature, half-inch wide evidence he found on the partially decomposed body. So I think people have in all regard met the burden of proof with count 1. Regard count 2, Dr. Dragovic again established that post-mortem the 10 fingertips of Jessica White were cut off. He testified as his basis for that opinion, and that is consistent with the testimony of Dr. Schuler with regard to the admission of the defendant. And in fact, he retrieved bolt cutters to engage in that act post-mortem. And then ultimately his reason why. And finally, I would note that it appears from the testimony that's been presented in terms of all three witnesses, Officer Westenberg, Detective Schuler, and Dr. Dragovic, that the body was recovered, wrapped in a heavy blue tarp, taped with gray duct tape and cable wire. And that does indicate a lot of thought going post-mortem into what to do about the heinous act that the evidence established. Jordan McClanahan did in fact engage in over an extended period of time with both counts 1 and count 2 on or about April 23, April 24, 2016 in the city of Parkland. Therefore, I grant the people's motion to bind over on both counts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to close that.
Yes. Before we adjourn today, I would simply ask that all those that are here on behalf of Jessica White, if you would just remain seated just for a minute, please. Anybody that is here from the family of Mr. McClanahan, I'd ask that if you could now depart the premises, and with regard to his father out in the hallway, to ask him as well to peacefully leave at this time. I thank you very much. Appreciate that. And lastly, I would ask that as everybody does leave before we adjourn, I'm asking everybody, it's very, very emotional. It's emotional for me, so I can't imagine for you. I'm asking you to please try to remain peaceful and lawful as you do leave here today. I would very much appreciate that. And I know I can't take questions, ma'am. I'm sorry.
It's just a week. I was just...
I understand. I take it there's nothing further. All right. I'm just going to give it a moment.